Okay, it's about 8:39 on Tuesday, June the 8th, and welcome to week 5. I finally filled out one hand of Introduction to Criminal Law. My name is Richard Wright, and first thing I want to let you guys know is that I have not had a chance to finish my week 3 grading for you guys. I did I just have to do the assignments. So I'm still working on those because we had some issues with internet over the weekend, and if you imagine long hours without internet, and my television is tied to my internet. That's one of the things I don't like about bundling something, is when something goes wrong, it just throws everything off. So, and then all I had was my 4Gs on my phone, but I can see stuff, but I can't really grade it that well. So anyway, I will be catching up this week, so don't be worried, because your week 4 was just completed a couple of days ago. So week 4 will be completed by the end of the week. And then, like I said again, we're doing week 5 now. Of course, it's almost over. So let's share my screen. Okay. And let's go to student preview mode. Okay. Oh, let's go back to it. Got kicked out. Let's do student preview. Start preview mode. Okay, so as you know already, this is where you get all your emails, your PowerPoints for week 5. I sent those out. You should have those. Well, actually, it's only one chapter, chapter 7 of the textbook. I don't, well, if I do have emails from any of you, you wouldn't see them here. Then let's look at the grade book. You see late's all over. That's because when it's student mode, it turns me into the student. And as you can see, I haven't turned in any assignments. It's bad news if you open up yours and it shows no participation, and so forth. Then you got a problem there. So anyway, so now let's look at week 5. So let's look at the topic of drunk driving. So here we are. As you know, your initial post is due when? When is your initial post due? Yep, Tuesday night. There you go. Very good. Thank you. Yep, Tuesday night. And then your reply post, of course, is due Saturday. Everybody should know this by now. Okay. I've only had one student that said to me recently, I thought all our posts were due on Saturday. I says, well, no, that's the way it is in term 1 when you have it, but not like this anyway. So yes, Tuesday nights, 11:59 p.m. So you use this fact pattern, and then your initial, it says in your initial reply. Now, what they say here, it is actually, they should say for your initial post, but your initial reply to the scenario is what they're talking about. Consider the scenario and the laws that relate to impaired driving discussed in the lecture. Uh, and then the question is, has the crime of drunk or drugged driving been committed? If so, by who? The male, the female, or both? Explain your position. Explain what enforcement action you would take, and then what would you do with the truck? So put that in your initial post, and then your reply post reply to another student's assignment. Okay, so that's pretty easy to get out of the way. So then let's look at the other assignment, which is your written assignment. And has a hate crime been committed? Now, this consists of not one, not two, but three. Now, let me explain to you up front. The whole point is that each part should be at least one page. Doesn't have to, it's not single space, it is double space. Notice it says this is a three-part assignment in which you're going to be approaching your responses in each section from a different perspective. And I've been in these perspectives in a professional career, having been a police officer. So you're going to determine and analyze and apply hate crimes from the perspective of a police officer responding to a scenario. Here it is right here. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say this, but that we've been having a whole lot of hate crimes taking place in this country, way too many. And so law enforcement has had its hands full. So I'm so sorry about all of that, but you guys are not only getting in-class experience about it, but you're getting real time stuff happening from what's happening in the world today. So I hope and pray that that will be changed. So the scenario here above, you're going to use it. And then to complete this, look, it says a minimum of one page. Explain whether or not the elements of a hate crime have been met. Explain one other crime in addition to the hate crime, and how were the elements of the crime met. So in other words, you want to describe the elements that are required there. Make sure you have citations in the body. Now, for each part, you have to have citations in the body, not a citation, elaborating on it. One page, please, good people. You can go beyond that, but at least a minimum of one page. And when you see the rubric, you'll see the same thing. Now you turn around and you look at another scenario, not the same scenario, but another scenario from a defense attorney. So you're defending someone, which I did that for many, many years. And so you're going to look at this fact pattern and then complete this with a minimum of one page again. What elements must the state prove to demonstrate that this was a hate crime? What strategy were used to show that Luke didn't intentionally target the victim? So your job is to try to not have it be a hate crime, but you also need to be able to lay out what the state has to prove, and then you're probably going to say they didn't prove it. That's what we defense lawyers do. So that's part two. And then the final perspective is, and somebody say, well, what's the difference in the police officer? This is the initial contact. This is the follow-up, as you know, detectives. And what they do is they gather the information that the police provide, and they begin to put it together. So I wasn't a detective, but I was an investigator, which is basically the same thing that I did. So for about 4 years. So you're going to analyze and apply hate crime laws from what the detective was asked to analyze on a report submitted by the patrol officer. That's what I said a few minutes ago regarding the call regarding a victim of a beating. And then you're going to look at the scenario here. All right. Complete this part of the assignment, again, a minimum of one page, and define what femicide is. Provide a source that would be credible. Do not, I repeat, do not use what source? What source do you not use to define femicide? Anybody? The name of it? What source don't you use? Okay, it's taking too long. So the answer is do not use Wikipedia. I have seen students try to define words with Wikipedia and they get a zap for that. I've already discussed that in this class and in all my classes. So explore a hate crime law and determine if cases of femicide are hate crimes. Are they or are they not? So make sure you use sources, include reference page, include APA citations throughout the paper, and try to minimize using the text book. You can use it, but outside sources are preferable. One of the best places to get that is a library and learning center as a source. And then you have some help here with this guides that talks about the online library, APA tutoring and writing lab if you need so. It is to be submitted as a Word document. As a Word document. And then here is the rubric, and you will see that here's how the rubric works now. They fixed it, and it tells how to get perfect score. Well, you can't see it in here. I think you can see it in when I get to the, I'll show it to you again. So do you have any questions about the written assignment? Okay. And then, of course, the live classroom recording. That's going to be given to you in just a little bit. All right. So let's get out of this and let's go back to the regular. So let's look at the announcement. Well, before we do that, I want to show you what I was talking about. If it shows up here, it should. Of course, you know where to find the live classroom lecture link. You know that if you're here. Okay. Oh, I don't want to do it with the assignment. Am I still on the, am I still on? Oh, no, I am on that. Okay, let's go back. Here we go. Come on, open up. Okay, so your live classroom recording. There it is, right there. And then, of course, this will be changed after I finish this, and I'll be putting in the link for the recording, and then you will also have the information that you need for that. Okay, and then you know your live classroom lecture is due. Okay, but what I wanted to do is show you this. Okay, let's see. Grading rubric should pop up here. Here we go. And so here is each section, just as I already explained it, part 1 and part 2, part 3, and then part 4. Now, of course, I said Wikipedia, no Wikipedia, because it's in there anyway. So you can lose almost nearly 1/4 of your points if you use Wikipedia. But nobody's going to do that, because if they do, they will lose big points. All right, so anyway, that's that. So now let's go to Okay, let's take that back. Okay, do the shortcut. So now let's take a look at the announcement for this week. Here we go. That. So moral crimes against moral values. And you're going to read chapter 7 of A Brief Introduction to Criminal Law. That's one chapter. And I gave you the corresponding PowerPoints. And we're going to discuss the activities of drug laws, drunk and drug driving, distracted driving, hate crimes, and then take a look at the key terms for practice, drunk driving, and forced blood draws, and identify the drug schedule, and then, of course, the all-important practice quiz. So several of you did pretty well on the week 3 quiz, which I told you was equivalent to a midterm exam, and I told you throughout the whole time how to get ready. So therefore, this is the second week for the what I call the final exam, which will be in week 6, which is the same kind. But I also said to you that be watching out for some of those similar questions from the practice quizzes. They're very, very, very similar, if not the same. Okay, so the lecture is taking place now. Your discussion assignment that we just talked about, and it tells you the due date and time. Then it talks about the written assignment that we just went over in the 3 parts and when they are due. And then, of course, you know, your live classroom lecture phrase is due. So I remind you to finish strong. Stay strong. You got one more week to go after this, and then you have a break until July. And then adversity, springboard success, you know what that's all about. If you don't know by now, do take a few minutes and click on it and take a look at it. It'll help you out there. It will give you some things about your professor so that you are aware of where I'm coming from in terms of how I want you to perform very well. Okay. So now let's get into the module itself. So, drug laws. For those of you who take or have taken my class, J250, which I'm teaching this term now. Some of you are in both classes, but not as many this time as usually. But you want to make sure that you pay close attention to the information that you learn there. So drugs, as you know, as we talk about crimes of morality, are crimes that hurt the individual, but it also hurts society. It also hurts your families. And so what it does is be aware of the fact, and I say it all the time, individuals, many who commit crimes to support their drug habits. And in supporting the drug habits, that allows the jails to be full. And I oftentimes say that long periods of time and sentences, that if you hear me talk about the war on drugs and how they try to lock people up for having quantities, even some small quantities, mandatory sentencing, it overcrowds the jail. But remember this, actually drug use is equivalent to the pandemic or COVID-19 or the flu or a cold. It's a health issue. It's a very serious health issue. And the only way that we're going to beat the problem is we can pass legislation after legislation after legislation. You can lock people up, let them out, They're going to be recidivists, or what I call repeat offenders. They're going to keep going on and on and on until they're going to either kill themselves by overdosing, or either they're going to kill someone. So one or the other. I lost a sister in 94 to an overdose of cocaine. And then I lost a cousin just a couple of days ago, very young. I think she was in her 30s or 40s, and same thing. So it's really devastating. So the laws are here, and we have what we call the Uniform Controlled Substance Act, which we classify drugs depending on the seriousness of the drug, and classify it based on the high potential for abuse, if there's no currently medical use in the United States, and there's no safety for it. Notice what's still in here. It says heroin, LSD, ecstasy. Those three will always probably be in here. This one right here is probably on its way out as a Schedule 1. Do you know why? Of course you do. Many states have legalized marijuana since the Controlled Substance Act of 1970, and that there are dispensaries in many states, and you can legally purchase the marijuana. Now, the difference is, though, that the marijuana that you buy from those places is regulated, and is not cut with other types of substances that could endanger your life. However, it is my position that even if you get pure marijuana, it's still a gateway drug for other things. No one can convince me otherwise. And then the other thing is that people I know who get high on marijuana, their thought process begin to slow down. It's like they have a delay in responding to things. You can get delays from responding for becoming older, or you can get it from marijuana at an early age. And so the controls, so it'll probably still stay on there for a while. And then remember, what happens is that now the government is, of course, competing against the sale. So they have a competitor, and that's illegal marijuana. So, but it said here, no currently accepted medical use. Well, as you probably know, you say, hey, first thing should jump out at you is, well, marijuana for glaucoma. Well, yeah, and things like that. We had a quarterback here in Chicago, Jim McMahon, who had some vision problems, and he left Illinois to move to, I think, Nevada, someplace where he could get medical marijuana, because he couldn't get it at first here. But the point of the matter is that all those things are changing as we speak. So then we get to, and you'll notice that the lower the schedule, the less dangerous. However, I think that these oxycodone, fentanyl, opium, and cocaine are all extremely deadly. I already told you about why I said cocaine, crack cocaine, the opioid addiction issue, oxycodone, which sets people up for destroying their lives and overdosing. So as you may have heard of Narcan. You ever heard of Narcan? Yes. So Narcan is used by first responders to try to bring a person back to life who has used the drugs. I had the privilege of having a man by the name of, let me pull this up, Tim Ryan. I'm holding up his book, From Dope to Hope. and a man in recovery. And he was actually, he's in the area here in the Joliet area. And he came and spoke at Rasmussen's Romeoville campus and gave me a copy of his book. But I recommend it. You can get it on Amazon, From Dope to Hope, A Man in Recovery, Tim Ryan. And in the book, he talks about the seriousness of the drugs and how he was not able to, he was able to kick it himself and become a counselor. But one of the sad things that happened to him was that he wasn't able to get his son um, off of it, and his son, like father, like son, but he overdosed on it, and that's one of his biggest regrets. So it's an epidemic, and it's very serious. And then Schedule 3, you start to get the things like Tylenol, codeine, suboxone, ketamine, anabolic steroids. So it shows a lower potential for abuse, but leads to psychological or physical dependence. Then you get lower and lower. Xanadex, Clopin, Valium, Soma. So a limited physical. The key thing, good people, and then all the way down to 5, we use cough suppressants, cough syrup, codeine, is that you should be aware that it creates a problem. And so here's some details about the problem with narcotics and crack cocaine. And then the war on drugs was to get people to say no. And as I said earlier, drug courts, I shouldn't say earlier, I said that drug courts were started. I represented many people in drug courts, but one of the things that I did say earlier is that the war on drugs was declared. Just Say No became a popular phrase, but here's the problem. It says, although the war on drugs continues today and examples of success can be cited, the drug problem still exists in the U.S. Illegal drugs will always exist as long as there is a supply and demand. That's my point in a nutshell. When you remove the demand, even if there is a supply, then it will go away. And so, again, the only way that's going to happen if you help people to overcome those issues. And then they talk about marijuana and some of the things that I just said a few minutes ago. So I'm not going to go over that. Uniform crime control laws throughout the country as well. So we talk about possession of drugs. You can have 2 kinds of possession: actual possession when it's on your person, or constructive when you have control over the area, such as your house and a car. So let's say you're the owner or driver of a car, and the person who is in the back seat or in the front seat sitting next to you has a marijuana pipe, and then it's in the vehicle, because the first thing you know, when the police come, they try to hide it. Well, if they find in the vehicle, guess who's going to be held responsible? The driver generally is the one, okay? The person operating the vehicle, not just the owner, but the driver. And then there are various statutes. Then there's what we call controlled substance analog. These are manufactured drugs, designer type drugs. They look like candy almost. You'd see them in those gas stations and some of those stores that you stop in, and you like 7-Eleven type stores, and they were manufactured there from China, primarily from China. And then this talks about some of the effects of those drugs as well, so you can go over that. All right, so drugs is one of the areas that is a part of that. So now let's talk about drunk driving and drug driving. As you should be aware, that driving under the influence is a very serious offense because it can create injury, property damage to yourself and to others. And so drunk driving is determined at this point in time by if you have a blood alcohol content of 0.08 after the breathalyzer test. It used to be before 1998, when I started practicing in 78, it was 0.10. But because of many people being killed, innocent people being killed from driving under the influence of alcohol, organizations such as MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and other organizations lobbied together to put pressure on the legislatures to change those laws. I wish that same kind of pressure could operate with guns as well, but that's a digression from this point. But anyway, drunk driving is definitely a very serious offense. I have seen people driving down the street and they go from curb to curb. And think about this as you're driving and a car approaches from the other direction. If that person is driving under influence, for no reason, all of a sudden they can come across that line and take you and them out. And so it's a very serious offense. It says alcohol impaired driving accounts for 31% of all driving fatalities. 2014, you had 9,967, and then the financial impact is in the billions. So if you're driving and the blood alcohol content is 0.08 based on the breathalyzer, then in that case you are deemed to be legally drunk, even if you think you can control a vehicle. Okay, but it's important to recognize that you should not, if you drink, don't drive. That's it, period. And all 50 states have these laws. So a person is driving under influence when they have what we call physical control of a vehicle. And here's some examples generally. Being in the driver's position of the front seat or in the driver's position of a streetcar or a trolley and having possession of the vehicle or streetcar's ignition keys or other ignition device can result in driving on, if you're driving under influence, and even if you're just sitting there, even if the car is not on, because you have the potential. Now, my wife has a car, and there are many cars that are like this now. She has a Mercedes, and she doesn't have to have her keys in her hand to start her car. She has to have her keys in the vicinity, either in her purse or somewhere in the car or in a pocket or something, and she hits this button and it starts off. So my question is, in those scenarios where a person is sitting in their vehicle in their purse, do you think that a prosecutor can make a successful argument that even though a car is off and a person is sitting under the influence of alcohol with the car off, but they have one of those and they're sitting under the driver's side, that they could be held responsible for driving under influence? What do you think? Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And so depending upon the car, of course, though, if it's a car and they're sitting in the front seat, and they They don't have their car keys, but they don't have one of those automatic starters, and they're just tore up drunk, but there are no keys around or nothing like that. Or maybe someone else has the keys. Um, in that case, they could possibly have an out there. But the key thing is this: is don't play games with this. So when you're sitting in the driver's position, you stand the chance whether the car is running or not. So drunk drivers kill people every year. I had one case that I represented, a person, involuntary homicide, where a person was driving under influence and his passenger was killed. So to prove this, all of the state had to do was prove that a motor vehicle was operated, uh, and the person was under influence of drugs or alcohol, and the blood alcohol content of 0.08, or if the driver is considered impaired, caused the death of another. That's it. That's all it takes. So there's some observations that you can see, such as a person, as I was talking about earlier, weaving, driving through a traffic signal, striking a curb. I've seen all of those. The driver's physical appearance, such as looking at this guy, or you can have the odor of the alcohol, red or bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, which, by the way, slurred speech does not always dictate that. I know of an instance of a person who was a dentist years and years ago. One of my friends defended him successfully, and the person had a stroke, and he was charged with a DUI. But even though the blood alcohol level was not up, but because of his slurred speech, they thought he was under the influence of drugs or something. But in reality, he was having a stroke. So there's a multiple number of factors. Then you could do these field sobriety tests. I'm sure you're familiar with those, where they ask you a series of questions, have you to do these, what we call the walk and turn, the Watt test, the one leg stand on one leg, the horizontal gauge, and see if your eyes can follow, those kind of things. Okay, and then be aware that if you don't take the blood alcohol test, if you don't take the breath test, you could lose your license because by driving, you give what we call implied consent laws to the law enforcement to enforce the laws, and you agree to participate and take the test, and you could lose your license for a long period of time like that. By the way, if you click on this, I think this one, you can actually download this file, then you'll see some ST instructions there. Okay. All right. Now, refusing to take a blood test. There's a case that was decided, Missouri versus McNeely, says that before you can be forced to have a blood draw, then now a warrant must be obtained to force a blood draw, unless there's some exigent circumstances, but primarily the blood draw is obtained after a warrant. And then drugged driving, taking drugs while driving is the same aspect, except there is no way to determine by a breathalyzer, of course, by that. But there also, you can do the field sobriety test as well, and you can learn more about driving under the influence of prescription drugs. As you probably noticed, if you look at most prescription drugs, just as a disclaimer, the companies usually will include a statement that it may cause you to be impaired. But of course, you know that's not necessarily the case, but it has happened. Okay. All right. And so that's we can get further information concerning that. Distracted driving is another issue. And distracted driving, one of the most common distracted driving things is texting. However, distracted driving is anything, loud music, um, looking at your navigation system. I always used to say that it's interesting that they got hand-free laws in most jurisdictions, but you look up on the dashboard and you see this big screen that and it always amazed me that people look at that. All it takes is one split second. And, so I don't know if in the future they're going to do something about that. But what has happened is that many manufacturers who now have um, the, um, the driving systems in there, whether it's a texting or talking, but dealing with the navigation system. The navigation system is put at a level now where you can keep your eye on it and the road at the same time. But I still know that it can still cause you to lose focus in terms of it and create an accident. But they talk about teen driving. As you may or may not know, it is a very expensive insurance move to have your teenager driving your cars in most jurisdictions. And as because of the statistics, males get into more accident than females. The rate is even higher for males as opposed to females. And they satisfy that not by discrimination, but by demonstrating that the statistics support their position. Distracted driving can be from eating. I've seen people doing all kinds of things. I've seen ladies putting on their makeup and all kinds of things. Uh, and you can actually be distracted from yelling. As you look up here, this person here, their face is because they're probably about to hit somebody, because you see she's got her phone in hand. We got a thing that I see on the tollway or the expressways that says hand in phone in one hand, ticket in the other. And what they're saying is that it is a violation of the law. But even stopping at a stoplight, and we all have been guilty of picking up our phones to either glance at something or text something. But you have to be careful about that, because it says an electronic device is including but not limited to a handheld wireless phone, handheld personal digital, or portable computer. And it said, but it does not include a global positioning system or navigation system that is physically integrated into the motor vehicle. So I think that what they're saying is that if it's built into it, there are people now who have added theirs up there. Man, it looks like an iPad on there, and you know what I'm talking about. So it's a battle. It's a battle. And so people have to resist the urge to respond to those types of things. All right. We got just one more section to do, and that's to deal with hate crimes. As you have assignment for that, hate crimes are very simply crimes that occur because of a person's sexual origin, gender, or disability, their race, and there are hate laws in almost every jurisdiction, and then there's federal hate crime legislation. So committing a crime such as a battery under a circumstance where it's done on the basis of picking that person out because of they fall into one of those categories, again, race, religion, color, disability, sexual orientation, national origin, or ancestry. whether or not the actor's physical perception was correct. And that's what I said earlier in this lecture when I was talking about the assignments, that we have, unfortunately, too much of that kind of thing going on in this country. But hate crime legislation has been around a while, but there's been a rise in the last 5 to 6 years of hate crimes that have taken place in the United States. And unfortunately, because of the coronavirus and someone using a term to attribute the cause of the coronavirus to be from a certain race of people, which is totally not correct. But the fact of the matter is that there have been people who have been picked on, and then because of things like, if you remember what happened with the dispute happening in Israel, there were Jews who were picked on. There are people who are Arabian people or Muslim people who are picked on, and it's from the Middle East. It's just a problem. So it needs to be fixed. And so these statutes or laws give you a more serious um, offense and results in you spending more time in jail. Okay. So take a look at this Wisconsin versus Mitchell, and state laws after Mitchell increased the penalties for these crimes, and you can take a look at these right here. So um, remember, you're going to have to do research to get into this topic. And that's it that I have for tonight, except I want to, before I give you your key phrase, I want to take a few minutes and go over the practice. You can take a look at this. Oh, okay. This one you do yourself. Ideal answer for dealing with this issue with driving under the influence and blood draws. Okay. So the case of Missouri versus McNeely, that's a source that you'll want to, but you'll want to, for practice, go over and check this out. Key terms. We talked about these terms. Make sure that you are aware of these terms. And I say it all the time. Make sure you're aware of them because you are going to run into them in your week 3 exam, which you had for modules 1 to 3. And then you're going to run into the key terms again at week 6 exam. So, and it's a way to study as well, getting ready for the final exam. And then you're going to go through and you're going to do these to help you get ready again to know the schedule. And what you're going to do is you're just going to put these together and you can just match them up. And so you're going to make sure that you line all of these up from schedule 1 to schedule 5 all the way. So, and then you submit it and it'll tell you whether you got them right or not. Okay. So I'm not going to take that because I'm trying to get through as soon as I can for you guys tonight. And then the last important thing is your practice quiz. How many times have I said this? Because I think I said it earlier in the lecture, but I say it every week. Don't forsake them. So let's see if you can get, we're going to do a couple of these. According to federal law, marijuana is a what drug with a high potential for abuse and no current or accepted medical use in the United States? What schedule is it? Which one is it? Anybody? Okay. Suggested schedule 1. Correct. It says no current or accepted medical use. And I said, even though I've heard about glaucoma, but they're talking about other than that. You are a police officer and you stopped a motor vehicle for speeding. While standing along the open window, you smell burnt marijuana coming from the vehicle. A search reveals marijuana in the console. The driver says, well, it's not mine. You may still take enforcement because the driver is in what possession of the marijuana? Yeah, don't say partial and not absolute, but yeah, it's constructive. You're right. It's only those two. Let's do one last one. While searching a man who is under arrest for a warrant, you locate a substance that is discovered to be homemade with chemical. Uh, no, I said it's not partial. It's either absolute or constructive. It's no partial. No, it's absolute or constructive. Those are the only two choices. No, I said it. Some people could try to use that, but no, use the legal terminology. And I went over that earlier in the lecture. So while searching a man who's under arrest for a warrant, you locate a substance that's discovered to be homemade with chemical properties similar to ecstasy. This is called a what? And what did you say? It's a, did you say controlled substance analog? Okay, let's see if you're right. The answer is yes. Okay, and it's similar structure to a Schedule 1 or 2 drug. Okay, so you go over these and you use those for studying tools. All right. So, any questions? Okay. Any suggestions for a key phrase? Because I already know the one I want to give you. I had one in mind, then I said, no, I'm going to use this one instead. You can type in the chat box, what do you think it could be? Is it written on here? Does it say hate crimes on here? Does it say it on my knuckles? Because that's the correct answer. Congratulations, you got it. What did you say your lecture is on June 11th? Did I say something about June 11th? Oh, 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 I'm doing a Facebook Live on June the 11th. Thank you. Because that's actually our community service day on June 11th. Yeah, thank you for reminding me to mention that. Yeah, and it'll be, let's see, I'm not really sure. I've got to do a total of 3 hours. So I'm probably going to start like around about 11 o'clock and I will go through for 3 hours and I'll talk about various issues. I mean, all kinds of things and commentary, and then I'll ask for people to, chime in if they want to put in. So 11 o'clock Central Time is the time that I tentatively have it. So Richard, okay, yeah, you could send me a friend request. Richard Wright JD is my Facebook, and you send a friend request. But yes, yeah, I have a lot of students, former students, who are friends of mine on Facebook. Okay, you say you're doing it right now? All right, let's see. Tell me when you did it. Oh, there it is right there. There it is right there. Richard, Wright, and then space for JD. There it is in the chat box. That's it right here. Richard, Wright, JD. Andy, gotcha. Okay, let me hit this thing for you. I saw it. Okay, I got yours. Okay, Jessica, I thought you had sent one. I see Andy's. So any of you want to send it? Okay. And if you have it under, okay, so you said you're doing it now. Did you send it, Jessica? Okay. Well, anyway, I don't see it. So you could send it and it'll send a message to me. And then I will, of course, accept it and it'll allow you, and then, you'll have it uh, at that time. Okay. Any questions from anybody? No questions? Okay, well, I'm going to say good night to you guys. I will see you next week with the final lecture. Remember, oh, you know what? I forgot to do something. Give me a minute. I knew it was something I missed. I got to go back. Let's go back to it so you'll see it. I want to show you this. Okay, got it, Jessica. Okay, so what I wanted to show you guys is that, so you're in now, and you can see a lot of stuff about me as well. But that's where you'll see it now, and you'll probably get a notification as well. Now you can see here's where we are today. The discussion post, initial post due tonight, the reply post due Saturday, and then Sunday the 13th. You'll see your written assignments. And so what I was pointing out to you is that notice the last lecture will be Tuesday. And then your written assignments are all due by that Friday, the 18th. That is the end. The course will then be over. Okay, that was what I wanted to share with you. All right, so I'm going to say good night. I'll see you guys next week. And those of you who have a chance to see the recording. And by the way, you should be aware that the live lecture will be also recorded. So it will be on there. I'm talking about on Facebook, Jessica and Andrew and anybody else who hears this. So good night, guys. Have a good week and continue to stay safe.